Du. Also, ja, okay. Hallo Lumi, kann ich sein? You're welcome. So as requested by many viewers so far, I'm going to share how I am defeating tier 100 dungeons with my Blizzard Sorc. And to do so, I think it's best to take a look first at the skill tree, so we know what the bases are. And then we will, of course, go over the Paragon, over the gameplay, the positioning, and we will take which kind of items, which kind of affixes are going to bring you the victory right here. So out of the first compartment here, we actually do not need anything in this build. So it's just 2 points into something random. So we unlock our core skills. What's interesting to know about this build is that our damage is not based on any points put in our skills. So this means we can use a lot of points to bring our defensive up, and all of our damage is coming from a specific aspect I will show you later. So right here, we are using the Frozen Orb to go into the Crater Frozen Orb, which has a chance to make all the enemies vulnerable, and this is one of our ways to apply vulnerable. And we are going to use the Frozen Orb enchantment alongside this. So whenever we're casting a non-basic skill, we are launching one of those Frozen Orbs. So we do not have Frozen Orb on the bar. We are going to shoot those passively, and this way we can have a really high vulnerable uptime. Then it depends how good your mana rolls are on your item affixes. So you can either put 1 point into Devastation if the free mana is giving you to a hold point, or you can go 1 point into Potent Warding. You do have to put this point to actually unlock the defensive skills. Then the most important skill, I would say, in tier 100 dungeons, where most of the stuff is not tankable, is Flame Shield. So we want to put as many points as possible into Flame Shield, and we want to get on the items as well to boost those defensive skills, just to bring the cooldown down as much as possible. Then here we're having some additional movement speed, which is great, but this one, Shimmering Flame Shield with the 50% heal, is a key factor. Then when we're talking about the teleport, we're just using it for the damage reduction basically. It's not about like speed farming or like coming around, it's actually damage reduction, so it's like a defensive skill that we're using when we are in trouble. Then Elemental Attunement, this build is going to have a lot of critical rate for a mage that usually has a really hard time getting critical rate. So 1 point in it is more than enough, because we're having a cap here of it can only work once every 10 seconds. So it's not worth actually to put more than 1 point in here. Glass Cannon, of course, the all-time favorite, right? Increased damage. That here is just insane. Then on the Ice Armor, we use it as a barrier to start going into monsters to be able to tank their distant attacks from the trash mobs. And we can get some more mana regeneration here. We don't need to go any deeper. Then Frost Nova is our second way of applying vulnerable, besides the Frozen Orb. But since we are doing tier 100 dungeons here, we cannot just like Crane AFK port into the monsters and just press Frost Nova and hope for the best. So it needs to be used wisely, and we are going here into the Mystical Frost Nova one for the vulnerable, of course. Then in this slot right here, the Conjuration one, we are going full defensive mode. So Mana Shield, of course, we are going to be pumping mana, so we're going to have the 21% damage reduction if played correctly up all the time. Then we are getting more barrier if we're using a cooldown. And if you see right here, we are having a lot of cooldown spells, which means our barrier uptime is going to be permanently if played correctly. This is important for our aspects later. And then align the elements. it's really, really important to have this max. Some people only do it like 1 point in, stuff like this. But especially in tier 100, you want to have that damage reduction, or otherwise you will just get one-shotted by everything. And you want to at least be able to tank distant attacks from normal monsters. That's your main goal here. And this allows you, if you dodge properly, to have a decent survivability. Then here it is important that we are getting 3 points into chill. We've already said we are constantly having a barrier up, and we are boosting our chill application from Blizzard. So Blizzard gives a chill for 18%, yeah? And if we are having this up, we are getting a way faster freeze. And if we are looking right here with this enhanced Blizzard, we are dealing more damage to frozen enemies, which is good, right? And this is one of our key parts why we have to get a good mana management going, is whenever we are casting Blizzards above 50 mana, they will tick for 4 seconds longer. And our whole damage is based out of Blizzards spawning spikes from a legendary aspect that we're going to take a look quickly. So here is a lot of our damage located. Like permafrost, 15%, perfect, right? 12% more against vulnerable. In this build, they're either going to be vulnerable by Frost Nova or they're vulnerable by the Frozen Orbs, so both works fine. And we have 8% 9% to chilled. They are always chilled because they're in the Blizzard. And 18% increased damage to Frozen. And we have multiple options to freeze the enemies. So this is one of the best multiplicators. It's also really good to have on an amulet, for example, as an actual roll to get more points into here. Then deep freeze is basically our oh shit button. So whenever we are like in a situation where we might going to die, right, we can press it. And what's really good is that we are going into the supreme deep freeze. So when our deep freeze ends, all of our non-ultimate cooldowns are reset. That means all of those right here are resetted. So we can go into Flame Shield, fight, yeah? When Flame Shields run off, we are going into deep freeze. We can wait it out, and then we can go back into Flame Shield to retreat from the enemies. So we have like a really powerful safety option, but that also allows us to go into engage mode this way. And then here for the key passives, there's 2 options you can play. You can either play with the Avalanche all along, like the whole time, yeah. And you can also play with Shattered while you're trying to clear the dungeon. This gives you more AoE clear if that's needed. And then you can switch to Avalanche once you're trying to fight the boss. This is your options in the skills here. Now let's take a look at the items and the aspects that you need to properly clear. Maybe one thing to be said: this character is not optimized. It can already run tier 100 dungeons in under 15 minutes. So the helmet right here is pretty decent. This has everything basically I want. It has intelligence, cooldown reduction, total armor, and maximum mana. And you're going with 25% damage from crowd controlled or vulnerable enemies. We can basically guarantee crowd control because chill is a crowd control. We can almost guarantee vulnerable if you're playing correctly. So we're having this damage reduction almost all the time up. Important on this helmet here is cooldown reduction and maximum mana. Those are your must-have rolls on here. If you see on our bar, we have 5 cooldown spells. So cooldown reduction is a must-have for everything, and it got nerfed in the last patch, which makes it even more important to get it wherever you can. Then the maximum mana. This is also important. So if we're hovering over our mana pool here, we are having 122 mana. Our Blizzard costs us 30 mana in my build. So that means we can cast 2 Blizzards and we are still above the 50 mana threshold. So they have a 4-second longer duration. with all the resource generation we are getting, we can cast 3 instantly, basically. And this guarantees us the Frozen Orb and the Vulnerable. So you should have about 120 mana, maybe 130, depending on how high your resource generation is. Then if we are looking at the chest, we are having one of the changes from the latest patch, that now when you're casting Blizzard and you enter it, you had 25% damage reduction, yeah? Now even if you're leaving it for 3 seconds, you have it, so you do not have to position yourself in Blizzards only anymore, which gives this build a lot of freedom. And the roles that we want here is total armor, damage reduction, intelligence, and we actually want damage reduction from distant enemies. Close enemies we do not care for them because we are playing the whole time at distance. I was just not able to find anything with distance so far. Then on the gauntlets, we do want to have the Frozen Tundra, which makes our Deep Freeze, while we are casting it, dropping spikes everywhere. And this also increases the radius of the spikes by 50%. But it does not only increase the radius of the spikes generated by Deep Freeze, it will also increase the radius by the spikes generated from Glacial. We're going to come to this as last because this is the most important piece of the whole build. And what we want to have as affixes on the gauntlets is attack speed, critical strike chance, chance to restore primary resources, and critical strike chance against injured enemies. I was just not able to find one so far, so I'm having dexterity meanwhile, just for some more base crit rate until I'm able to find a better piece of cloth here. Then for the pants, we are going for disobedience aspect. It's still one of the best defensive aspects in the game, especially as a sorcerer where armor is extremely low, and it's a key factor. And here our pants are looking pretty decent. We have damage reduction against distant enemies. This is perfect. Intelligence, damage reduction. I was just not able yet to actually roll the armor on that slot, and I have rolled so many times on this item that I'm saying it's not worth it anymore, and I'm trying to find new pants. Then for the boots. The best option actually is the unique Isus Halion, because this gives us a huge amount of critical strike chance that we can get this way. If you do not happen to drop one yet, don't worry, it's not 100% required. You can also go with boots that have teleport, flame shield, frost nova, and movement speed on them. You can also have like mana cost reduction on it. Like the boots are pretty flexible. And if you don't have the unique, I would prefer to have skills rolls for our defensives, especially flame shield and frost nova are really important, so you can drop the cooldown even more. Then we are now coming to our weapons. What's interesting in this build is it's one of the few builds where our weapon damage does not matter. So it does not matter if we're having 1100 damage per second on a weapon or 1300, it's completely irrelevant. The reason why is because we are getting all of our damage from our amulet here. So basically, we're only looking for really good rolls on our weapon. And the best rolls are vulnerable damage, damage to distant enemies, because we are basically fighting on range the whole time, intelligence, and critical strike damage. Those are good, and this weapon, I would say it's pretty top notch already. There's not a lot to look out for a better one, because we can basically ignore the damage per second. The aspect we want is the Stormwell, which gives us more damage to vulnerable enemies while we're having a barrier up, and we are able to have vulnerable up almost all the time and barrier all the time, so this is a really good scaler here. Then now let's finally come to our amulet. That's like the the key factor of the whole build, because this gives 50% increase to our aspect, and the only aspect we ever want to have on our amulet is actually the glacial. Because the glacial makes it when we are casting our blizzard, we are getting spikes going. And the spikes you see here, they are dealing 2000 damage, yeah? And this is our main damage source. All of our scalers are scaling onto this spike damage, so they are scalable. And if we're going back into the skill tree, this is also the reason why we do not have to put any points into Blizzard or into the Frozen Orb. All the damage we are dealing is coming from those spikes. And here we also have another hidden multiplier for attack speed, which means it's also good for us to have like a higher attack speed, which is also the reason why we want to use one-handed weapons with a higher attack speed, rather than like having higher DPS, while DPS, like we learned, it does not matter for us. Then on the amulet, what affixes do we want? We do want to have movement speed if we are running the Isos Halo boots, because this will give us basically additional critical rate. If we are not running them, then we can also go for something else than movement speed. Then ranks of all defensive skills is really good, mana cost reduction is really good, and what you should actually have as a must-have here is cooldown reduction. So I was sadly not able to find an amulet with those three bottom stats and cooldown reduction, but this is one of the keys that I'm currently farming for. Then next up are the rings. Both rings should be fairly equal, because we do not need any different stuffs than resource generation, #1 priority critical strike chance, vulnerable damage, critical strike damage. This is basically what we are looking for on the rings. And here we are having the aspect of control, which means 35% damage if we are having them under CC, and we are having a lot of options to actually get them through Frozen, which is easy for us to apply. One note is that this aspect was nerfed. So previously you were able to get 35% free times if you managed to optimize your build for it. This is not possible anymore. Then next up, we need to take care of our resource generation and our resource management. Like we said, we always want to cast above 50 mana. And to be able to do this and maintain this, we are having a lot of cooldown skills, and every cooldown that we are pressing will give us 20 mana back, which means if we are doing a good rotation of our skills, we are above 50 mana the whole time. And here you can see I was sadly not able to get vulnerable damage onto this ring, but I have a 52.5% damage to injured enemies, and I would say it's not best in slot, but paired with the critical strike chance against injured enemies, this is pretty decent to proc the explosions from the Frozen and have an AoE clear, especially on packs. I was surprised that it works that well, and since it's a max roll, I didn't bother on getting a second ring here. Then on our focus right here, it's really important to note that focus has the basic of 10.3% cooldown reduction as a base stat. So like for example right here, we're having 50% lucky hit chance as a base stat, yeah? So a focus is almost mandatory because we have so many cooldown spells. And what we do want to have here is a mana cost reduction is an optional. So what we do want to have is cooldown reduction, critical strike chance against injured enemies, and resource generation. And the mana cost reduction that I rolled here would better be exchanged into critical strike rate. But this is the same as with other parts. I have rolled so much on this focus so far that one roll is more than 5 to 6 million. So I'm currently able to farm. I'm able to beat the tier 100 dungeons regularly. So I am rather looking for a new focus than just spending my money right here. And the only thing you need to make sure when you, for example, in a situation like me, and you want to re-roll the mana cost reduction off here, then make sure that your mana pool and the cost of Blizzard is still so you can cast 3 Blizzards without dropping under 50 mana. And the aspect we are using here is the conceded one, which gives us increased damage while we're having a barrier active. So basically this means we have 24% damage permanently up against the enemies. If you want to check your stats and your critical strike chance, the effect of the Isur's Hylon is only counted while you're in combat. So if you see right here, now we're going into city and the bonus from the movement speed is removed from our critical strike chance. This is maybe something to note when you want to check how it works. For example, I was a bit confused when I put it on. I didn't get anything from the movement speed. I was like, wait, are those boats broken? But it's only applied once you are outside of a city. Now let's go over the Paragon board and then I show you some final gameplays and positionings, and then yeah, you're all set to defeat the tier 100s by yourself. Oh wait, actually I am stupid. I forgot to talk about the gems. Do gems first and then we're going to Paragon. So on the armor, we do want to have rubies flat to increase our health. You should have about 10,000 health. To with all the tankiness we can get and the barriers, about 10,000 health is enough to clear tier 100 dungeons. That's about the threshold you should reach. Then now with the hearts, it does not really matter where they're on. Just try to get the 3 that I'm saying. So brutal heart is really important. It helps us to suppress incoming damage of up to 20%, and then we are able to deal fire damage afterwards. The damage is not so good, not so important. Important is that we have another option to suppress incoming damage. Then here, this is a really good multiplier right here, because the Talrasha gives us for every source of damage that we are dealing 11.5%. And we have 4 different sources in this build. So we can do cold damage, yeah. We can do electric damage with our teleport. We can do fire damage either with the brutal heart or with our flame shield. And, which is important, our next heart, the wrathful heart, gives us shadow damage. So the damage that's applied for this is shadow damage, and this way we are getting a 4th multiplier in there. And this heart I would say is mandatory. This heart is the best heart for this build. Try to farm it as fast as possible. It's like the key of the build. Without this heart, you will have such a hard time even playing. Like, make sure to get this. It's really important, because I do not even have, I have a mid-roll, yeah, it's not even perfect, but 3 seconds of permanently stacking damage, yeah, and for every second we are getting a multiplier on it again. It's just crazy. Because for you it doesn't matter if the damage is instant, right, or if you wait 3 seconds. The monsters, you just go there and the monsters just pop. That's really important. So now let's take a look at the Paragon board. Maybe one word first on Paragon boards in general. It is important in which order you are doing them, okay? So, because every board that you are adding is giving higher requirements to the rare nodes. So here you're seeing 200 intelligence you need to have, yeah? So you can actually get the another 10% non-physical damage requirement. If we are going now to my latest board, yeah? This is the latest board I have. Do you see now how high the requirements are? 870 and 620 dex. So every additional board you are adding increases the base requirements of the rare nodes. So you need to do them in this order to have all the bonuses. It's important. So what are we focusing on? We are focusing on damage reduction from vulnerable and from chilled, because we can apply chilled permanently. And we do need to have a decent chunk of damage reduction to not be one-shotted by everything and be able to tank this. In our first part, we do want to have the controlled cleave, where we are dealing more damage to chilled enemies. We're chilling all the time, and we have another multiplier against frozen enemies, which is really good. And the base stat is 115.8% damage to crowd-controlled enemies. We are having them crowd-controlled almost all the time with Chilled and Blizzard, so we're having a permanent scaler right here. Maybe something to note when you are building your board. While your cleaves are not level 21 yet, yeah, it's better to go for flat bonuses like those ones right here. Once your cleaves are better, remove them, go for the cleaves first, and then add those here in the end. That's the best strategy to always keep a fairly high power level. In this board right here, our main focus is Icefall first. Killing a frozen enemy grants us Barrier. The barrier lasts for 5 seconds and not like 2 or 3 seconds. All the enemies we are killing are mostly frozen most of the time. So this gives us a crazy additional barrier uptime. Like I said, if you're playing correctly, you are almost never without a barrier as long as you're in a fight. What we are looking here for is the reinforced cleave, where we are having damage reduction while we are having an active barrier. Oh, we have the damage reduction all the time, right? And we are getting damage reduction from chilled enemies. They are always chilled, so we're having this. And we are doing more damage to chilled enemies. And important to note here is that frozen enemies are also considered chilled enemies. So we're having this multiplier also all the time. Then right here, we are having one of the best blue and rare spots right here, because vulnerable damage is its own damage multiplicator. So every vulnerable damage you get is basically directly casted onto your damage as a multiplicator. So finding vulnerable damage somewhere on the board is really, really strong. So I do recommend picking this up whenever you cannot reach any specific point, like a legendary node, for example, or a cleave. This is a lot of value. Then here we are going with the tactician one, where we are dealing 10% increased damage for 4 seconds after we are casting a defensive skill. Which is great, because as you already know, we are having 4 defensive skills on our bar. So if we are playing properly, we can have this up a lot of the time. And what's also nice, we are getting vulnerable damage again, and we just learned that it's one of the best multipliers we can have for our damage. Then we are, after doing those 3 boards, we are going over here. This is going to be our 4th board, where we're going into the cleave right here, and we are going with Frostbite, where we are having a 145.5% multiplier for the damage to chilled enemies. And similar to here, the crowd controlled, we are having this applied all the time, so this is a permanent multiplier for us. And then we are having another one that gives us survivability. 13% reduced damage to you for 5 seconds after they are no longer frozen. So we are freezing them, they are no danger. They are getting out of freeze, they maybe need like a bit more damage to finally drop, right? We do not have to worry too much about them, they will deal less damage. Then next up, another multiplier that is pretty strong is critical strike damage. And we are getting a shit ton here, almost 100%. And it's also important that if we are critical striking, we are getting even more damage going, yeah? So we are doing a critical strike and we are getting another 2%. The more critical strikes we are getting, the more we are stacking. We can stack up to 12%. And we are having about, if we are fully equipped, fully maxed out, we are having about 60% critical strike chance base and 100% against injured enemies. This is what the build is able to do, and which means we can stack this up all the time. Then maybe something that's important here are those nodes to mention right here, where you can get damage reduction from elites, which is really important. And the sorcerer has not a lot of ways to actually gain armor, so here we can pick up a sneaky 200 armor extra right there. And now to the last glyph right here. It's probably one of the best glyphs overall for most of the classes. It's the exploit glyph, where we are getting vulnerable damage, which we already learned is just amazing, and we can have it up all the time in our build. And we are actually getting another scalar similar to the critical strike chance for vulnerable. So whenever we are dealing damage to a vulnerable enemy, we are stacking it up again. So we can get 12% from here stacked up, and from here 10%. We just have to be in the fight consistently. Yeah, and that's the Paragon board. Now let's head over to some gameplay so I show you how to do the positioning, and then you are all set to defeat Tier 100 Nightmare Dungeons all by yourself.